But guys, I tell you right now, I did have a good wife because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. It's because still don't know what medicine I'm taking today. she and she have it set out there, and she'd go on her trips, and she'd have a big old long thing, have the everyday medicine, and she'd call or text me or get a hold of Seth or Chance and make sure that I was taking. And there was days I wouldn't because I'd forget about it. But got a good wife, and but when we got put in the hospital, all at once I just started losing the weight. And I think while in the hospital, 2 to 3 weeks, I lost 40-something pounds. And the doctor said it was too fast, too much, and and I'm still having issues with the muscle, So I can't really arm wrestle too good right now, but it's we go through things that we go through. We was laying there, and the doc come in. He says, "Well, your kidneys are gone, and we're going to have to do a temporary dialysis right now." And so I didn't know exactly what he was talking about, but I'd agreed with him on it. And they took me to surgery, and I put a port right here in my chest right here. I didn't know exactly when they'd done it, but I knew they'd done it. But I was laying there in bed in the surgery room or whatever, and I opened my eyes, and I seen the doctor standing at the end of the bed, and had a cowboy hat on, had a doctor's coat on, kind of tall, slim guy, looking at me, and he says, "Why don't you stand up a minute?" So I stood up, and he reached in there and pulled something out of his shirt, out of his coat, and he was working it like this right here. And Debbie says, "I've already given 2 or 3 different stories, so I'm gonna try to give the one I gave her, that I gave them the next morning I woke up." And he was sitting there just, I mean, it's like this happened just yesterday, but he was sitting there messing with it, and he said, "I want you to stand up." And I stood up, and he said, "I want you to catch this." And he throwed it at me, and I caught it, and it was doughy, flexible, so I threw it back to him, and he did that. And on the 3rd time he throwed it, said, "One more time." He throwed it to me. When he throwed it to me, I caught it. As I was catching it, goes through my hands and hits me in the chest. And as I was reaching around to get it, it's dissolving into my chest. And I raised up and looked at the doctor, and the doctor pointed his finger and says, "You're going to be all right." And then I woke up. It was like the clay. We all know the story of the potter and the clay, that we're the clay, he's the pot, the Lord is the potter. So, and it made me realize he's taking care of the situation. He's just going to rework it and fix it, and I'm going to be okay. So that's what, and that's what happened. So I've given that testimony to a lot of different people, and they said you're going to have to. While I was in the hospital, the doctor said it's acute. Debbie, is that right? Acute dialysis or kidney failure, and we're going to have to do dialysis. That's when he did all of that, and it was caused by, say it with me, medically induced. The kidney problem I had was medically induced, and that means whatever they was giving me, messed the kidneys up, and I done got down to like 40% before they said they wanted to do the dialysis, and I appreciate what man can do, but I didn't like the dialysis. But they put me on it. It was a temporary, and they put it right here in the chest, and I started the second night or the second day we was going, I was throwing up something, and it was green. It was like a green slime, and I was spitting it out, and because I was pretty sick, laying there. So the next day we went to dialysis again, and I was laying there asleep, and I woke up, and there's my two nurses were at the edge of the bed working on them. And I looked over at the on that table. There's about this tall, about this big around green slime. That's, you know what slime looks like, especially if you watch the Ghostbusters. And it was green slime, and it was sitting there. The nurses were doing something, and it was the nurses that waited on me all that's 2 to 3 months I was there. And I looked at the nurse. I said, "What is that?" She said, "That's what we're getting out of you." I said, "Oh, okay." And so the next day, we went back to her room and come back, and I asked and the nurses were standing there doing their different things, getting ready to hook me up. And I said, "What'd you do with that green stuff?" She looked at me. I said, she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, other day when I was in here, there was a jar of green slime-looking stuff, and you told me you got it out of me." She kind of grinned a little bit, and she says, "Well, that didn't happen." I said, "Well, that's what you told me." And it was you. And she said, "Well, it wasn't me." And how and I've had a number of little visions like that, or dreams. And Debbie told me about the one that I told everybody about. I was laying there in the bed, and it's funny how the Lord reveals Himself to you. He says that there was a little boy running around in the room, just hyped up, hyper, whatever, just having a good time, running here, running there, and she said, "I told him it was me," or somebody told me that was me when I was little. I said, "Well, God brings us through a lot of different things, and so when we go through this and we go through that, and everyone, and I'm not testifying to the fact, and I do give God the glory for what He's brought us through, and how we faced what we faced through the problems that we went through, and we have to learn to trust Him in every situation that we do in life, because some of my issues right now is not got nothing to do with the sickness. It's to do with age, and when we're just getting older, and the things that we used to could do, we can't do anymore, and we have to learn to adjust of what we're doing. And I remember Dad, when we was a year or two before he passed away, I'd come around by the shop there at the house, and he'd be standing there with his hands in his pocket, and I'd give anything I could talk to him right now, because he would stand there and just watch me drive around the road, and didn't take time like I felt like I should have, I guess, to sit there and talk with him. I mean, I did stop and talk, and we talked a lot and prayed and everything, and how the stories that he would give us. And that's the hardest thing that was for him, is the problem that he had. He knows what he was wanting to tell you, and a lot of you know what I'm talking about, but when he'd be telling you the story, telling what he was saying, but he thought he was telling you a good story, but the Lord was with him all the time, and how He watched over it, and I could tell some bunch of his stories that he's told me over the years. But we go through a lot of things in life to learn to trust the Lord, no matter what it is. And one of the things I thought was pretty neat, when I got out of the hospital, and they told me I was going to go to dialysis 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. It was, a lot of it was rough, and a lot at the same time, and a lot of it was okay. It's because I'd walk in that dialysis department, and they're all, it's amazing. They're all over the country, but there'd be 10 to 15 people sitting on with that machine, and you'd have to sit with this machine 3 to 4 hours. And I loved going in the mornings, but my schedule usually was in the afternoons. And sometimes they'd call me early and said, "Come on in." And we'd sit there, and the doctor would come maybe once a month to come see us. I was on it, about 4 months. And Debbie, for a good while there, Debbie would have to carry me up there because when I got out of the hospital and starting to do some kind of therapy, I couldn't step up these steps. I barely could. They sent me to a therapy, and he'd sit me on a 4-inch step like this right here, and one of my exercises was to step up and then step down and do the other foot the same way. And we do that for 30 minutes, and didn't understand it, but how it was bringing me back out of a lot of the stuff I went in. It's because we'd be in bed, and I got to go home. We'd be in bed at night, and I'd have to go to the bathroom. And Debbie wouldn't let me get up without her up there first. It's because she was afraid I was going to fall. And all through the whole process we've been going through, I haven't stopped. I don't know, can I say the word pee? Or urinating. That's what part of life is. I hadn't stopped it. I still do it today, But I would talk to some of these guys and ladies, men and women, that I would talk to. That there was 2 guys that I sit there and talked to. They hadn't peed in 3 years, and I said, "Well, that's a good sign for me." It's because I'm still doing it, and I can't stop. And it got me to feeling bad. One of the nurses says, "You don't need to be doing that much." What is she talking about? And the doctor, the kidney doctor, would come in, and he would shake his head about me, feeling for me. He says, "We're going to have to change your port." The port I was on was like 3 months. He said, "We're going to have to change that to a permanent port." And I said, "Oh, permanent?" He said, "I'm going to put it in your arm." I said, "It's not going to be permanent, Doc. I know somebody." And I'm sitting there, we're sitting there talking. He looks at me and says, wanting to know who I was talking about. And I says, "You know who I'm talking about." And whether he was a Christian or not, I don't know, because he was about this tall. He's one of them guys from another part of the world. It's a good man. I'm not talking bad about him at all. And he watched over me, and he said, "Well, we'll see. We'll see." It went on, and I don't know what it means, but my numbers started getting better, and I was at like a 12. This is what my nurse is telling me. She says, "You need to keep getting better." Every week we do it. It went up to a 16, and she was just really excited about it. She said, "You go up 1 or more, 2." She said, "We'll be able to stop some of your. We'll cut it down to 2 days away." I said, "Okay." And me and Debbie, she made me drink things, eat things that I still don't like today. And one of them is what was it? Celery juice. Oh Lord! And I got where I learned. I just hold my nose and I wouldn't sup it. I'd turn it up just to get it down. And there's a lot of stuff that I've drank and eaten that I do that just to get it down. And I can't handle it. I don't know what it is. I hadn't been, and it's telling me you need a lot of protein. You need a lot of protein no more. Don't drink coffee no more. I drank a cup of coffee this morning, a half a cup, and that's the first time I've done it in months. And I followed after what they said to do, and I come in, she says, "Your numbers is doing a whole lot better, and they're gonna cut you down to 2 days." I said, "Great." And 3 or 4 weeks went on like that, and they told me again that they're gonna cut me down to 1 day. And all this time that we're talking, I have shirts, and I've ruined a bunch of my shirts. I have Debbie to cut a hole in the shirt like it's right here where it'll flip up, and that's the way they would do hook me up to a machine, and my blood was doing this right here. And I don't care what they said, still had a smell and an odor to it. Not necessarily an odor, but a smell. And I said an odor, but a smell. And I can, every once in a while, I can still smell that smell today. And so, I said, all these folks that are in, I could see them, and I wasn't complaining a whole lot. It's because, man, probably over 75% of the people I was around during that hospital stay, they're a lot worse off than I was. So and so I'd get scriptures in the Bible and write the scripture right there on top of it, and then different people have seen it because I've had different ones talk to me about it. And one of the nurses said, "What is that?" I said, "That's a scripture in the Bible," and it was Isaiah 53:5. And then on the other shirt it was 1 Peter 2:24. And I said, they're saying the same thing, but at the same time, one of them says, "We by His stripes we are healed," and the other one says, "By His stripes we were healed." But I wouldn't tell them what it was saying. She said, "What is that? What's the verse say?" I said, "Look it up." Next night I'd come in, she'd agree with me, I said, "That's what I believe in for healing, when it's going to happen." And they'd come to me and I've had them come in and give me scriptures, and I said, well, I'll try to write on whatever I can. But that last day, or not the last day, but I was on one day a week, and she said, "Now if your numbers climb up to a 30, is that what it was? Something like that, then they'll be taking you off." But that doctor was claiming that I was going to be a permanent on dialysis, and I said, "No, I wouldn't let them put it in my arm." They talked about it, and I said, "No, it's not going in my arm," because I seen different ones there at the dialysis area that they were full, and some of them were so pitiful looking, and I'd sit there in the chair. It's funny, but I'd sit there in my chair while those machines were going on, and I'd look around, see all the different people. And there's one lady that we didn't hardly ever seen. It's because she'd lay down and they put that on her, but they'd cover her completely up. Only time we seen her is when sometimes they would pull that, rework that too fast, it would cause them to start getting cramps, and you'd